everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And today we're talking about Dark City, released in 1998 and directed by Alex Proyas. Written by Alex Proyas and Lem Dobbs and David S. Goyer from a story by Alex Proyas. And starring Rufus Sewell, Kiefer Sutherland, Jennifer Connelly, Richard O'Brien, and the late, great William Hurt. This was a movie that I did not see in the theater. I feel like I don't know when I first heard about it, to be honest with you. I didn't see it until it was out on DVD. I was probably working at Blockbuster. And I remember really liking it. I bought the DVD. But after watching it for this, I think that was only the second time I had seen it. I don't think I had seen it since the first time I had watched it nearly 20 years ago. So I didn't remember. The only thing I remembered from this movie was Kiefer Sutherland's, the way he spoke in the movie.
Yes,
exactly. That was it.
It's definitely when someone mentions this movie to me, which is never, that's one of the first things I think of too, because it's so rememberable, obviously. And it's a really neat performance. I personally really like it. Do you?
No, yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because it's not, especially after seeing something like 24, where Kiefer Sutherland is Jack Bauer, who is, this super tough, I forget what the organization he worked for in 24, but anyway, he's this action kind of guy. It's interesting to see Kiefer Sutherland kind of play this, not quite frail, but like, just kind of like this smaller kind of scared weakling type kind of almost character. But I thought he does it really well. And I wrote, one of my notes was, I don't know why he kind of chose to speak that way, but it really works.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
It's part of his character, like as in, it's not like his voice is an attribute of who he is.
Right.
Like when he comes into play, and I remember the first time when you pick up that he's doing that, you're just kind of like, does he have something wrong with him?
Mm-hmm.
Is it just he's like super smart, and like it's all these different things, but it's kind of a mysterious quality in this character that makes him, for lack of a better term, rememberable, which I already said.
Right.
Yeah, I love Professor. How do you pronounce his name?
Hold on.
Schreiber,
maybe?
Yeah.
Because there's not an I in it. It's just Schreber, I think is how it's spelled. So I think it's just Schreiber.
So he's got a cool name too.
Yeah. So I take it you didn't see this in the theater either, did you? Because it was 98.
No, I don't remember like watching it for the first time, but like you said, I remember liking it, but I do remember who told me about it, and it was this guy in college, and he just mentioned Dark City. And when I watched it, I had no idea like, what the premise was about or anything. So that's the way to watch this movie too.
Yeah, it really is. I think it was recommended to me from a coworker at Blockbuster, because I remember seeing the cover for it and everything, and I think somebody was like, you got to watch it. And I think they, did the same thing. They didn't tell me anything about it. And so I took it home and watched it, and I remember really, really enjoying it. But like I said, I hadn't watched it since. So tonight watching it was practically like watching it for the first time, because I had no memory of basically anything. I knew, I remember hearing, because I did see it after The Matrix had come out. And I feel like I do remember hearing that it had similarities to The Matrix. But I didn't remember what those similarities were or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, that definitely pops in my head watching it this time.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, this came out a year before The Matrix, and maybe The Matrix had some inspiration from here.
I thought about that too, but I was thinking like, I don't know. I'd have to look up to see when exactly it was released in 98, but I would assume that The Matrix was probably shooting in 98.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
I feel like it's probably just a crazy coincidence, unless the Wachowskis happen to like read one of the versions of the script or something and then took inspiration
like,
from
was
that.
it one of those things where you have like Babe and Gordy,
Right? Yeah,
and
the Illusionist and the Prestige. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Dante's Peak and Volcano.
And we've got Dark City and The Matrix, and no one really probably remembers Dark City very much.
But they should, because it's a really interesting movie. And it just, I feel like it just, I did think that when I was watching it today, I was like, this movie, I think, was ahead of its time, really, because some of the stuff that some of the visual effects in the movie, I feel like could be done better now.
Yeah,
because we'll get to. There's one part in particular that just looks terrible, but some of the building shifting and stuff like that could be done. I mean, didn't look bad, but I feel like it could look better, and they could make it bigger.
Right today you would have gotten, Inception.
Right. I did think about Inception too while I was watching it.
But yeah, I was thinking because at the last scene where they're having the final battle and all the chaos that they are having to show taking place, I remember thinking, if this were done today, it just, they didn't have the ability to really work with the situation that they were dealing with. You had two guys fighting with their minds,
right?
Which is, it's cool, but there's also almost like a goofiness to it.
Yeah. I thought of that actually, because Rufus Sewell is standing. He plays the main character, John Murdoch, and that scene where they're fighting with their minds, he's just standing there kind of looking ahead, but leaned over.
And yeah, they're leaning really far into each other. Yes.
And I was like, that had to feel so dumb on set, just standing there pointing your forehead at the guy across from you, basically.
After The Matrix comes out, they're like, we kind of look stupid.
We could have done that. So I have another question for you real quick, because I don't have it on Blu-ray, I only have it on the DVD that I bought probably 20 years ago. And I realized now that this is just the theatrical version, but there is a director's cut out there.
Yeah, I noticed that because I had to rent it.
Okay.
And I saw that there was the director's, and I was like, I'm kind of curious to see that. But
so you watched the theatrical version?
Yes.
I don't know. I am very curious to watch the director's cut now. And I know, just looking at IMDb, one of the big differences is the theatrical version starts off with voiceover from Kiefer Sutherland, where he tells you about the strangers and them being able to tune. And apparently in the director's cut, that isn't in there. So, because the director, Alex Proyas, thought that gave away too much too soon.
Oh, I definitely thought so.
And so,
because I had my son, I had my kids watching it, and my dad who had never seen it, and I was like, I remember trying, sometimes I have to convince them to watch a movie because they don't always trust that what I'm suggesting is going to be good. I don't know why, but
you have bad taste, Dad.
But anyway, they were like, "What's it about?" And I was like, I don't want to say anything. I was like, you just have to sit down and watch it.
Right.
Because that's part of the experience, is just the confusion and
figuring it out as you go. Yeah.
Yeah. But also not knowing, there's something mystery here that's going to, so I didn't tell him. But then Kiefer Sutherland at the beginning starts doing that. And I'm like, okay.
Well, I guess I could have just read the back of the DVD cover.
They know something is now amiss.
There is still a mystery to it, but yeah, I do think watching it without the voiceover narration in the beginning would be the better way to go, because I feel like you'd be much more probably hooked and being like, what is going on in this movie? We got to figure out what, because you would see John Murdoch with the crime scene, and when the strangers first do anything, put people to sleep or change something, you'd be like, what's going on?
Right.
So yeah, I think it would be really interesting to watch them. I'm really intrigued to watch the director's cut. I would be curious to know how much is different, number one, but number two, if it's a better movie or not. Because I really like the theatrical version, but I do think the
Right.
voiceover is unnecessary.
I can't remember if I feel like when I first saw the movie, I didn't have that knowledge. So I don't know. Maybe it was my ADD and I wasn't paying
You just-
attention.
Or maybe you just came in late, just didn't see the very beginning or something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't recall having that knowledge either. But I know I watched this DVD, so it had to have been on there. But like I said, I also didn't remember anything from the movie because it had been so long.
Mm-hmm. So did you watch the whole movie and like not have anything kind of click back as time went on, or?
I mean, I remembered the strangers, but I didn't remember anything about the tuning. I didn't remember anything about John Murdoch being able to tune. I didn't remember the big reveal at the end as to where they are.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't remember any of that.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about it if you want, since I just brought it up. I mean, that's the very end of the movie, but yeah, that was actually kind of surprising. I didn't remember. I mean, clearly we see in the beginning of the movie when Murdoch kills one of the strangers that it's like an alien creature crawling out of that guy's head. So it makes sense that they're aliens. I didn't think about it until later, but when Mr. Hand says, we use your dead as vessels or something, I was like, oh, that's cool and super creepy.
Right.
But it's basically just aliens inhabiting these dead human bodies.
Right. Which also, gives reason as to why they kind of look like zombies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Very
pale and everything.
Yeah. By the way, I love their names. Mr. Book, Mr. Sleep.
Yeah. Mr. Hand.
Mr. Hand. Mr. Door. No, it's Mr. Wall. Was there a Mr. Door?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. But yeah, well, I don't know. What was the name of the kid?
That was Mr. Sleep.
Was that Mr. Sleep?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I think they called it Mr. Sleep. So.
He was super creepy. Especially at the end when he's like, kill him. Or, well, actually, it was very high-pitched. It was like, kill him. it was very bizarre. But no, the big reveal at the end of the movie is that they're floating in the city in space, which I thought was just crazy.
It's almost like that's another thing where I was like, did they get the idea from this movie? It was like Halo. Because like you just have this open water by the end, when he releases the water, and it's got clouds and it's like this floating flat Earth-like surface.
Yeah, Discworld basically, Terry Pratchett type stuff. The end where he creates Shell Beach and he goes to see Jennifer Connelly, and Anna. I was thinking tonight, I was like, that looks really fake, but it works because it is fake. It's what he created to basically meet her again and start their life together. But I just remember thinking like the clouds in the background almost look computer generated. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
But I was thinking,
what that scene
works.
it always reminds me of the Truman Show.
I actually wrote that down. I wrote
I
wrote that this movie is like it's a combination of the Truman Show and the Matrix is what I wrote. And I forget, it wasn't that scene that made me think of it, but it was another scene, and I think it was either them talking about how they watch them. I think it was because, they talk about how the strangers, this whole thing is an experiment from the strangers to try to figure out kind of what makes a human and
right. And for the longest time I was trying to figure out, I was like, wait a minute, like Dr. Shabazz, whatever
Schraber.
his name is. Schraber, Professor Schraber,
Dr. Kiefer.
Yes, Dr. Kiefer. Says in the beginning that they're looking that they're dying and that they're looking basically for a cure to their mortality. So I was like, when he was explaining later, because I was like, okay, here we go, and he starts explaining how they're studying like the behaviors and everything, and I was like, but that doesn't make any sense. Like, why do they care? But then he's like, they think they can unlock the human soul, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool,
right? Yeah, and so they're observing humans, and I think maybe that's what made me think of the Truman Show. There was something specific that I'm not remembering now, but I know it was part of a conversation. And it might have been when Dr. Schraber was explaining it to John, because he's like the only human who actually knows what's going on, because he's a part of he's working for them, essentially. And so he explains to John, who they are and what they're doing, and talks about, trying to unlock the human soul. And so I don't know if it was that scene or not, but it's just something about them observing humans and all that stuff, and it made me think very much about the Truman Show. It also might have been when Mr. Hand got imprinted with John's memories, and so he kind of knew everything that that Murdoch had experienced, even though that none of it was real. I guess it was imprinted with fake memories, really, but
it was the memories that was still supposed to have left over,
right? And he still did kind of have them, because Murdoch got a flash here and there of like being at Shell Beach and as a kid and stuff like that. So,
which I really thought was cool. Like the whole Shell Beach thing was kind of neat, that there was this destination that had mystery. Like everyone knows what it is, but no one can remember actually
how to get there.
Yeah,
that I thought was super cool. How it's so subtle in the beginning too. He's like, hey, "Can it take me to Shell Beach?" Or he asks him how to get to Shell Beach, and the cab driver's like, "Yeah, you take I forget the road names, but he says you take Main Street, or is it 2nd Street?" He's like, "I can't remember if it's this or this," and it's just kind of you don't really think anything about it,
right?
But then as time goes on, and you realize, there's something crazy going on, and he asks William Hurt, and William Hurt can't remember how to get to Shell Beach. And he's so sure,
Yeah, he's like, "Of course I know where it is.
To get to Shell Beach." And then he's like, Or do I? Yeah, and he even says, like, "You can't think of it, can you?" And he goes, "Well, give me a minute." It's like,
I love the whole concept of that. People are living their lives and have no idea that this is going on, but when you actually stop to think, like, they're like, "Wait a minute, I actually don't have a memory."
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have memories, like some of them, but I don't remember what it is John asks him, but he asks him to, he's like, basically, when was the last time you remember?
Doing something during the day.
That's what it was, yes.
And he was like, and I'm not talking about a memory from childhood. He's like, when's the last time you remember, like yesterday or last week, going out and doing something during the day? And William Hurt, he plays it subtle, but William Hurt, it's like, he obviously can't. He can't think of anything, because there is no day in Dark City. Which is another really cool thing.
Until John Murdoch comes along and he creates a sun.
Right. But I like that too, that he goes to see Uncle Carl, and he sees the time and it's almost midnight, and he's like, "How did I miss the day? How is it night already?" And Uncle Carl's like, you're tired. Stop asking me questions," or something like that, and he just kind of blows him off. But it's another kind of cool mystery. This whole movie, this had to have been kind of a difficult shoot, because they had to shoot the entire, unless I read that it was all on, there was no actual location shoots on this movie. Everything was on a set or a soundstage or maybe a backlot, because there's a couple of like street scenes and stuff. But if they did anything outside, it would all have to be during, night shoots, which I know is probably very difficult to do. But yeah, the entire movie up until the very, very end, like the last 2 shots of the movie basically it's all nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
It's all,
hence dark city.
It is, exactly. It is a very dark movie. I remember I watched most of this movie last night, and I was glad that I was watching it at night, because I was like, I wouldn't be able to see this movie if it was during the day. And then I finished the rest of it this evening, and I kind of was like, I wish it was a little darker in here. It's like, this is a movie where you really need a dark auditorium, blackout curtains or whatever on your windows if you've got, windows in that room, because it is a very dark movie. However, the lighting in the movie I really, really like. And it really reminds me of another movie, and I cannot put my finger on it, but especially in the very beginning when Murdoch wakes up and he's in the bathtub, and there's just that one kind of swinging light, and he finds a couple of different little clues, like there's a key that he finds. The lighting in that scene it's very, like, everything's really, there's no soft light. It's all harsh shadows.
Which is cool, because there's basically spotlights on certain parts of the room. Yeah.
And it like, watching it really reminded me of another movie, but I really couldn't think of what it is. Part of me wants to say Memento, but I don't remember Memento having really kind of harsh lighting like that, so I don't think it's that.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
But can't put maybe I'm sure I'll think of it after we hit stop on the recording, but I really like the lighting. I thought it looked really, really cool. The editing is also another thing that that stood out to me, because it's so, like, it's cut so quickly, this movie. Some scenes go, it's like, there's I remember when Jennifer Connelly first shows up, she's singing, and that scene is kind of slow moving a little bit, to an extent, just her singing. But then she meets somebody and they talk about her husband, and then the next shot is her meeting Dr. Schraber or something like that. And it's just it's all just like, movement from one scene to the other is very, very quick. And I think part of it is on purpose, because it has to do with the strangers, and kind of everything takes place during night, even though nobody realizes there's nothing during the day. And it's almost kind of like they were probably asleep in between those moments, almost, because it shows the strangers, like, moving people. Like, It showed the strangers putting that one guy in the barber's seat getting a haircut, and it also showed them carrying some other guy in somewhere else. And then when they wake up, that's their new memories have been implanted, and that's where they had left off.
Right.
So
I always thought before this viewing that they were doing the whole city, but this time I was like, I wonder, are they doing the whole city every night, or are they just doing, like, select groups of people?
It's hard to say, because they said that they were retuning every single night, and the whole city stops, and buildings change and everything. So it kind of made it seem like it was the entire city. But maybe they do change little, but at the same time, they'd have to have Dr. Shaver go to every single person and implant new memories to every single person every night. And that might be.
But the other thing is, you're going to have people that they're not touching that would know. Like, I think it would basically web out that everyone would have to have their memories changed, because someone would supposed to know someone that wouldn't, and it would just throw everything off.
Yes.
It's like, what's the term of the
butterfly effect?
No. Where the 6 points.
6 points of separation?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Somebody somewhere would mess up. One of the strangers would be like, okay, I think we're good. Let's start time up again. And then somebody would be like, I'm supposed to meet John here. And they're like, oh, crap. We changed John. He's over here now. I did really like, though, that that's another great scene where you see the married couple, and they look like they're in this rundown apartment. He's wearing, like, a wife beater, and he's talking about not getting a raise from somebody or something like that. And then they tune that, and they give him new memories, and all of a sudden they're like this high class, rich couple with, blah, blah, blah.
And when they wake up, that's their life.
That's who they've always been. Yeah, exactly. I think that's so interesting. But it is I think you've kind of maybe picked up on a plot hole, because if they aren't changing everybody every night, somebody would pick up on it. And Walensky did.
But he mentions that. Wait, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying who he was. He was William Hurt's, like, I don't know if it was his partner, but it was somebody who it was at the police on the police force with William Hurt.
He mentions, though, that he wakes up in the middle of the syringe too. So
just like Murdoch did.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. I wonder why, so when Murdoch woke up in the middle of the syringe, he doesn't remember the syringe, but he does know that, he actually doesn't remember who he is either. He's having to piece all that together. But then the strangers immediately go after him. Like, he's like, Murdoch has become, like, priority number one. So why do you think Walensky was not a priority? Why they just decided to let him?
Right. It's another plot hole, Justin.
It could be. I asked that question wondering if you had an explanation for it. I did look on IMDb trivia. They mentioned that, and this seems a little bit of a cheat, I guess you could say. But Alex Proyas, the director, said that leaving him in there to kind of try to explain to everybody, like there's something crazy going on,
would make it not believable.
Well, as an experiment in and of itself to see like how other humans would react to him and stuff like that, which I was like, okay, I can kind of see that. Because they did make him kind of go all the way crazy. He's writing on the walls and then eventually kills himself. Walensky, by the way, was played by this. He looked so familiar to me, and he was in Darkman. He plays Lewis. I forget what the character's name is. Lewis Strack Jr., I believe, from Darkman. But he's got kind of an accent in this movie, which he doesn't have in Darkman. But he's one of the villains in Darkman.
Gotcha.
Oh yeah, so when the strangers put people to sleep, like at midnight every night, the world, the city, goes to sleep. But it's also kind of like they stop time. But at the same time, we see people literally going to sleep. You would think there'd be like car accidents and stuff, but you just see those cars just kind of coming to a stop. Right. But like that couple that I was talking about in the rundown apartment, they literally fall asleep into their soup.
Right.
And when the strangers come to everybody, they'd say sleep, and people just kind of pass out. So how do they stop cars from slamming into each other and everything?
You did it again, man.
Another plot hole.
There's so many. My stars are coming down.
It was just a question I had. I just was wondering. I was like, you'd think the strangers are like sleep, and then all of a sudden it's like, and they're like, oh god, we got to come up with another method. This is a mistake.
There's something. I mean, clearly the technology is really high here.
Right.
They built a machine that lets their minds create or manipulate reality, basically.
Yeah. Do you think it would have worked better if they had not, portrayed them as falling asleep and just had them be frozen? And then, Dr. Kiefer comes and sticks a syringe in their foreheads and
wouldn't that be the same thing? Like, wouldn't they still crash into each other? Because...
Well, no. If it was portrayed as like time was stopping, like a Zach Morris timeout and Saved by the Bell, you know what I mean? Where they just were especially if you like, they could do it where this would have maybe been hard in '98. I don't know, where like somebody was pouring a drink and then you see like the liquid like stop before it goes into the glass, or something. So that way, time has actually stopped. Nobody's actually asleep. They're just like frozen.
Yeah.
And they do all the stuff they need to do or move people or wherever and then start time back up again. And they just start from where they
Right. But then you would definitely have to have an explanation, which would be easy. You just say whatever power John has, they have too. And that's what keeps him from getting stuck in that frozen time spot.
And they don't ever explain why Murdoch has the ability to tune, do they?
Right. Which I wish they had.
Yeah, I kind of do too. They just say somehow you have developed the ability to tune. And I thought maybe they should have gone a little further and been like, maybe it would have been every human would eventually develop the ability to tune. Like the more that the strangers experiment on them and use their tuning like around humans, like it's almost like a contagious type thing, like we start to pick up on it type thing. That would have been kind of cool if they had explained something like that, but they made it seem like Murdoch was a one and only type of deal.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that yeah, absolutely, that they were literally infecting the people unknowingly,
right,
giving them their powers so that they will be an equal match. Like, dude, who made this movie?
Alex Proyas?
No, I mean the studio.
Oh, New Line Cinema?
Okay. We want to do a trilogy. So we've got some ideas.
Dark City 2 coming in 2023, 2024. A New Line Cinema, I think, is owned now by Warner Brothers, so it'd be a Warner Brothers.
Okay.
But yeah, I wish there had been a little bit more of an explanation about that. And I do like that. I mean, because Murdoch is the only one that can do it, that's why they're so interested in him. You know, and maybe that's why they left Walensky alone, because he didn't show any tuning powers.
Well, but they come for him before they know he has powers. So
that's true, because he just had woken up in the middle of the process.
But they do definitely continue to look for him, and he becomes very important because he's causing problems. Like, I think they mentioned, I don't remember what it was, but he interferes basically with their tuning at some point. What was it? They couldn't finish a road.
Because he had done something.
Yeah, was that when he was like hanging from the sign? I think they were coming after him at that point and fought with them, and that's when they saw that he had the powers. And
yeah, that's true. When I forget what he does, but there's one moment where Mr. Hand, I think, is like, he can tune. Like, they're very surprised by it. Yeah, the first time we see him tuning is when his wallet is in the little box at the automaton or whatever it's called. You know, where we don't even see like the cook behind the wall, but
which is cool,
putting stuff in the little boxes.
What it really, now that we're talking about it, you really don't talk to anyone else in the movie. Like, all of the citizens are kind of, you know, you've got the two police officers at the beginning, you've got the girlfriend, one night stander that he runs into,
May or whatever.
Yeah, but for the most part, this city almost feels dead itself. Like, you see the cars, but there's no like personality in it, because we've got the cook, but we never see him. It's almost like there's just this blockage of communication with people.
Maybe all the cars that come to a stop at midnight actually have no drivers.
Wouldn't people notice that, though?
Well, yeah, but maybe it's dark. Who knows? I mean, they obviously, like, there's the cab driver in the beginning, but I was thinking, you know, it gives the illusion of a busy city. You see the cars moving, but maybe they're just all like going in circles.
Yeah, there's only like 20 people in this city.
Right.
And that's how they're able to do the mines, like, for everyone.
Yeah, there's not. I mean, we really don't see that many people. You're right. We see. There's the guy at the hotel who like owned the hotel, who was like running the hotel, who then eventually becomes the newspaper man. And there's like a handful of other people. Really, it's potentially not that many people in the city. That's interesting. Even though it looked like, especially when we see once we realize we're in space and we see the disc.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Of the city. It's a pretty big city.
Yeah.
I wrote in the beginning of the movie, the city actually kind of reminds me of Tim Burton's Batman, the 1989 kind of Gotham City. That's kind of the grungy, kind of nasty feeling you kind of get.
And a little bit, you know, like another movie that reminded me of kind of Gotham City, that Tim Burton Gotham City, is Dick Tracy, which we were also talking about doing an episode on. So if you're interested in hearing that, let us know, because I'm kind of excited about doing Dick Tracy at some point.
Yeah, me too. It's been on our list to do for a little while, so I'm excited about doing Dick Tracy. Yeah, I can see that too. It has that kind of there's just there's like a surreal kind of element to it, and that's definitely the case in Dick Tracy as well, because Dick Tracy has that whole comic book kind of feel to it. And this movie has it's surreal, but it's also, it like is realistic, but you can also tell there's something off about it. You know?
It's plasticky, not like looking, but just like at its core. It's basically it's forced, really. Yeah. But what did you think of the music? I felt like the music, if you picked up on it, is one of the great parts about this movie.
I was really impressed with the music, and I immediately kind of looked up if I could buy the soundtrack on iTunes, and it's not available as far as I could tell. And I didn't see it on Amazon either, so I don't know if the soundtrack was ever released, which is a shame because the score is really good.
Yeah. And it
the music
fits the visuals, like you were just talking about. That's kind of one of the things was, just when you have a shot of the city and you've got those cars and that traffic, just the music makes it feel so, especially when you start to know what's going on, like automated, basically. It's, and you've got that clock, that it's, yeah, I love the music.
Yeah, I do too. I wrote that. Actually, that was one of my notes. Was it's the fourth note I wrote, so it was clearly towards the beginning of the movie. I said the music is amazing. It feels very suspenseful, and we are still in the first act. Was my note because the music was very kind of fast paced and suspenseful, and it felt like music that kind of belonged almost towards the end of a movie where stuff was would be building up towards like an action scene. But it was all in the beginning where we're still trying to figure out who Murdoch even is and stuff like that, So it was, the whole movie has excellent music, and I'm really disappointed. Maybe maybe a CD was released back in the late '90s. Maybe I can find it on eBay or something. But I didn't see it on iTunes. It's not available digitally anyway, or on Spotify, which is a shame. Trevor Jones was the composer of the score. I just looked it up. And that's pretty much all the notes I wrote, except for my last. Well, I did write, the strangers can reshape reality, but can't remove people from existence. And they need Dr. Schraber to add memories, so they have limitations. So I am curious to know what the extent of the strangers' powers are. Because they can obviously reshape buildings. I think they can even pretty much create buildings out of, nothing.
But it's all apparently based on the machine that they built, right? So they can't do that without the technology that they built. So
you're right, because Murdoch talks about how he's got everything there that he needs to create what he needs if he just concentrates hard enough. So you're right. I think if Murdoch had been taken out of Dark City and placed back on Earth, he would have no ability to reshape reality, right?
Right. That's my take. Maybe he'd be a really good psychic or something.
Right. Yeah, maybe. He can like move like a spoon across a table or something, but that's about it. Okay, well that makes sense. Because I was curious, it just was like because they say in the beginning of the movie, again, it's the voiceover that was added against the director's, will. But he says I think the words he says is they can reshape reality at will. And I just thought, well, if you can reshape reality, why couldn't you just take somebody out of it, just be like, and you don't exist anymore, So Murdoch could just be taken care of. I mean, obviously there'd be no movie if that was the case, but then they also can't just implant memories at will. They have to get Dr. Schraber to have the syringe and put it in via syringe and stuff. So there is limitations to what they can do.
That's something else too. My dad mentioned when we were watching. He's like, when does this movie take place? And I was like, I didn't want to be like, it doesn't. Like, it's an illusion. So I didn't really answer him. But he was like, I see something like. Something he mentioned was like from the 40s, and he's like, and that's like from the 50s. So later on, I was like, look, like I've forgotten too that they were doing that they had taken different pieces of different eras and put them in there. So I was like, that's kind of cool that my dad even
picked up on.
Yeah.
I did really like, it's got a very film noir kind of feeling to it. And I didn't necessarily pick up on, hey, that's from the 40s and that's from the 50s, but there is a kind of almost timeless aspect to it where it's almost like Superman the animated series, right? Where the cars and the buildings are Art Deco and look very kind of old school, but then you've got the technology and stuff that is kind of newer and everything. So there is that kind of in my opinion, it's kind of timeless quality where it's looks like it's kind of in the past, but at the same time It could very well be present day. You're
Right.
unsure about like when.
What
it actually
animated
could take
series are you
place.
talking about? The
The one
old
that came
ones?
out, yeah, the one that came out after Batman the Animated Series.
Oh no, I'm
It
talking
has a
about-
little bit more of a futuristic look to it, but I like how. I mean, it's you could say the same thing about Batman the Animated Series, where
Uh-huh.
like all the men in Batman the Animated Series wear the fedoras and
Right.
the suits like they did in the 40s, but it also is basically present day.
Yeah,
you know?
when we were watching it as kids, like absolutely, that was that time. Like we
Yeah.
weren't like, oh, we're watching something from a long time ago.
Right.
And even Tim Burton's Batman has that.
Yeah, it does.
But it took place in present day. So
Right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
love when
Batman
they-
the Animated Series is probably actually a better example because I think it probably because the cars have that kind of almost 40s style look to it as well in Batman the Animated Series, and I thought Superman did too, but maybe not quite as much. But yeah, it's one of those things I really like about. I like when they do that. Is what I was trying to say. Actually, I like that Batman the Animated Series does that. I like that this movie kind of does it. It reminds me of like. Not at all. Never mind. I'm not going to say that. I was going to say Sky Captain. But that movie actually takes place in like
Yes,
the
it does.
50s.
But I know what you mean. Yeah, no, I mean, like there's only certain movies that can do that and pull it off, and this was one of them. Maybe because you mentioned that noir kind of feel, and
Mm-hmm.
there's kind of also a detective story, and you've got William Hurt, here as the detective. Like it definitely has that feel. You have the hard, like the green lamp style desk,
Right. Yeah.
or pool table,
Right.
just- it's got that noir kind of feel, like you said, and
Definitely.
I definitely like it too when they can do it and be creative with it and it feel like present,
Yeah.
present day.
Absolutely. What did you think about William Hurt's death scene? So he's if you remember, he gets pulled out into space basically. Him and a stranger.
That's right.
They end up falling through. So Murdoch and I forget William Hurt's character's name, but the detective find a wall that says Shell Beach, and they start knocking the wall down. And Kiefer Sutherland's like, "Don't do it." And once they make a hole in the wall, they realize that they see space
Right.
and outer space. That is not like a closet space. And so then they realize, oh, we're on basically like on an alien ship. But I remember thinking like, they didn't like, you don't just see space. You like, it's just the reality. I mean, it's difficult to talk about the reality of something when it's
Right.
aliens on a dark city spaceship in space. But like they would have been like sucked out. But when William Hurt and the stranger end up going through the hole, they like hit like a force field and go
Yes.
through the force field, and then they're in space.
Yes.
And I thought that was really cool. Like that the city is actually
protected.
from outer space by like a force field that I assume, has oxygen in it and all that stuff.
Right.
So the fact that they knocked the wall down and saw space and weren't just immediately like sucked out into the vacuum of space, I was like, okay, now
Yeah,
there's an
it
explanation
explained
for
it.
it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I thought that was actually really super cool.
Yeah.
I was
one of-
sad to see William Hurt die, but it was
Right.
cool that they did that and explained it by showing us that.
Yeah. And I remember watching too and thinking like all the plot twists we had when I was watching this, like I said, with my dad, and I was like, but there's still a really big one coming up. Because that is a huge plot twist.
Yeah.
Um,
You're right though. Like there's so many mysteries to solve, and like you kind of almost feel like you've gotten them all solved when Murdoch and the detective kind of team up finally, until one of them asks, "But where are we?" And you're kind of like, "You're right. Where does Dark City? Where is it?" And then you find out, and you're like, that's really the only place it could be, I suppose. I mean, it could be on a different other planet, but being floating out in space, I think is just such a cool idea.
yeah. It's a panic moment too,
Right.
because you are not on Earth, and You're never going to see Earth again.
Nothing you can do. Yep.
God knows where Earth is, like how far away, and this is now your home.
Forever. Yeah. Yeah, it would be terrifying, honestly. It would be kind of soul-crushing if, like, you're Truman Show type, mindset. Like, I'm getting out of here. I'm going back home. And then you find out this is your home.
Right. But they make it a happy ending because John Murdoch can make that place whatever he wants. And he's got the girl with him, and
all is well.
Yes. Until
Part
Dark
2?
City 2 by John Pelzel and Justin Speck comes out.
Right. Dark City 2, Darker City. What did you think about Mr. Hand, the actor that plays Mr. Hand, which I believe is Richard O'Brien?
I thought he was a good stranger.
Yeah.
He definitely, brought the feeling of what the strangers were. They definitely had a sense of, what these creatures were. They were all very much alike, just very stiff and not really any emotion. And I love how they kind of made him, the advantage he had over Murdoch is insane, right? Because he literally can see into his mind.
Right, yeah. He can access his memories. And
yeah, he can't see what John's thinking of at the moment, but he not only can, if you think about it, he's got an even bigger advantage because he doesn't have to be only seeing what John's thinking. He has the entire catalog.
Yeah, all of his memories, any place that Murdoch has been before that he thinks about, oh, maybe I should hide out here, Mr. Hand knows about.
Right. Which is really awesome. Yeah. Such a cool concept.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that too. And I just thought, I don't know, I haven't really looked at Richard O'Brien's IMDb. I know that he was in the Rocky Horror Picture Show, but I don't know of any other movies he's in, and he is really good in this. Like, he's perfectly cast. He's got just that voice he does. I don't know if that's Richard O'Brien's like actual, speaking voice, but it's perfect and kind of creepy. And
yeah,
I was really impressed with Richard O'Brien in this movie and the character of Mr. Hand. I almost kind of wish they had, like, Mr. Book didn't have Mr. Book had to be a little bit more commanding, I guess. So that's why they kind of got the older guy. And he was fine, but I wasn't as impressed with Mr. Book as I was with Mr. Hand. And then there's another guy, and I don't know what his character's name was. I can look real quick. Mr. Wall. That was Mr. Wall, played by Bruce Spence, who was also in Mad Max 2, or The Road Warrior. And he was also in The Matrix Revolutions. He plays the train man in The Matrix Revolutions, which, if you ever watch,
yes,
watch that again,
I saw. I thought I recognized him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wasn't he also in? Wasn't he in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective 2?
He might have been.
I think he's one of the hunters.
All right, let's see if he's in Ace Ventura 2.
Yeah. When Nature Calls.
Right. Yes, of course. What year was that?
That was 96, I think.
95. You were right. He's in it. He plays a character named
Look at me.
Gaji. Wow, that's funny. I will never do Ace Ventura on the podcast, so I could go ahead and tell this story in this one, I guess. I saw that movie in the theater, and I was 95. I was 12, I guess. And so I just thought it was hilarious. And when it came to the Dollar Theater, my grandfather was actually in town. And so I went to go see it at the Dollar Theater with my grandfather. And I think my dad was there too. But when we walked out, my grandfather said, "Well, that was a waste of $1."
That's hilarious.
Yeah. That was
yeah, it's not necessarily one that grandparents in 1995
right
would have been
just
very thrilled to see.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really funny at the time.
What was his reaction to the rhino scene?
I don't know. I think I don't recall any. I don't recall looking over at my grandfather at any moment in the movie, but I probably purposefully didn't look over at him during that scene.
You're like sweating.
Yeah.
You're like, this is so uncomfortable for an 8-year-old kid.
I was 12.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah. I loved the first Ace Ventura too, so it was just the fact that we were getting a sequel to Ace Ventura. I was all stoked
I like them
about.
both.
I do too. I haven't.
But the second one is definitely, you have to be a fan of Ace Ventura.
Right. It's yeah. Yeah.
The
Bumblebee
first one,
tuna?
anyone can watch that and get something out of it. The second one, you definitely have to have a understanding. And apparently we're never going to get a 3.
I guess not.
At least with Jim Carrey.
If Jim Carrey's retired, yeah, we did get Ace Ventura Jr., which I did not watch, but yeah, I guess if Jim Carrey's retiring from acting, then we probably won't get an Ace Ventura 3.
Yeah,
which is probably for the best.
Yeah, I know, right? But I definitely remember like 10 years ago just thinking, I'd love to see an Ace Ventura 3. just
eating breakfast one morning, you're making buttering toast and being like, gosh, I really wish we had Ace Ventura 3.
That's about how it happened.
That's pretty good. So I found out that Roger Ebert, the late Roger Ebert, said that this was the best movie of 1998. And he actually recorded a commentary that's on the DVD. It's one of the special features. It's a commentary by
cool.
Roger Ebert. Yeah. And then the other commentary says it's with the director, writers, director of photography, and production designer. Mm-hmm. But I thought it would be really interesting to actually kind of watch the movie with listening to the Roger Ebert commentary.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
And once again, bringing it up, I definitely want to kind of see the director's cut now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, me too. For sure. There's a couple other things I wanted to talk about. First, let's talk about Jennifer Connelly. I don't really have a whole lot to say about Jennifer Connelly. She's good in this movie. She doesn't have a whole lot to do, but she's the love interest essentially of Murdoch, and you find, it's one of those things too. It's when you find out that the memories have been implanted and everything. Murdoch even says to her, I think, like, we don't. The first time we met might have been
right
in the apartment yesterday. Yeah. Which is always kind of crazy. I used to think about that with The Matrix. Mm-hmm. It's like this moment that I'm experiencing right now could be the very first moment of like
am I like
my
only
existence.
Am I only like a second old?
Right, exactly. And everything that all my memories are actually, just were implanted memories. And this movie obviously does the exact same thing. And so it's always kind of interesting / creepy to think about,
It's because it's real.
It's which one, Dark City or The Matrix? Or both. Another very similar Matrix thing that happens in this movie is towards the end when and this is another moment that I actually really liked, was when Kiefer Sutherland implants memories into John Murdoch, and it's memories of Kiefer Sutherland teaching him how to use the tuning powers. Right.
I remembered that happening, but I didn't remember how well they like reveal that. Yeah, to the audience. Like, it's so cool how they're speeding. Everything's like going fast, but you have like Kiefer Sutherland just
in every
giving
memory,
the instruction.
basically. Yeah,
and he's like a different character, but it's him, and he's got. And I don't think he doesn't have his
speech pattern. No, yeah, he speaks more like regular Kiefer Sutherland in the memories, which I thought was really cool. It's like how he kind of almost wants to be portrayed.
Right. It's like character. How he. Yeah, exactly. I love that scene. This movie it's really good. Yeah. It's a really good movie.
Yeah. It's very, the reason I think about The Matrix is because it's very similar to the I Know Kung Fu, like downloading information to your brain, basically. but this movie did it first, technically. So, like I said, ahead of its time. The other last note that I wrote has to do with Mr. Book at the very end. The CG alien that comes out of Mr. Mr. Book was so bad. That was
What do you think about their design, by the way?
I think the aliens look kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Did you notice it goes into their brain at one moment when they're doing the clicking stuff, and like it shows the alien when you first like see that there's like something in them, and like its teeth are like going in like a spiral, like doing the clicking.
Oh, interesting.
It was kind of neat.
I guess I somehow missed that. I did like the clicking that the strangers did. That it just gave it another creepy vibe that just made them more interesting to me, I guess, or just creepy in general. Just their little clicking. But yeah, the CGI at the end is I mean the whole mind battle could be a little bit better in terms of computer graphics, but especially that moment where it looked hand drawn practically, the alien that comes out of Mr. Book. Yeah. It was pretty bad. I wonder if that's updated or anything for the director's cut, or if it still has kind of the same dated look.
I would imagine it looks the same, because I feel like this movie, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's a cult following for it, but I feel like this movie has kind of been swept under the rug.
Well, I do think there's a cult following for it, but I don't think it's as big as other movies. You know what I mean? I think there's a small group of people who really like this movie. I could be wrong. Maybe it's bigger than I realized, but like I said, it was recommended to me by a guy that I, worked with, and so I think there's a fan base for it.
Yeah, but that was pretty close to around the time.
Well, that's true. It was only like 4 years after it came out. Yeah, that's true.
This movie's now 24 years old?
Yeah.
24 years old. So yeah, I totally agree. It was definitely before its time. And apparently, The Matrix had a little bit bigger budget.
Yeah, a little bit.
But with what they did with this movie and the creativity, the originality of everything, it's just... And seeing it for the first time, I remember and even now, remembering just the idea itself is just, it kind of blows you away. Like, that's deep.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want to go into ratings?
Yeah. Go ahead. You first.
All right. I will give it, trying to think what I'm going to pick as mine.
I know, it's actually kind of difficult because you and I have talked about it and we've pretty much given it this glowing review where we have very little bad things to say about it. So I feel like it deserves like a 4.5.
I know what I'm giving it. I'm just trying to figure out what item I'm going to be using.
Oh, okay. I'll cut all that out then. Because I'm like leaning. Well, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I basically just went over like how I think the movie's so good it's ahead of its time. Everything that. So I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 John Murdoch's leaning.
John Murdoch's. Oh, his mind battle
leaning while tuning.
That's pretty good. I like that. Very creative, actually, to pick that. That was not where I was gonna go. Yeah, I'm torn. Because like I think my original rating was gonna be 4 stars, which is still pretty good. But the more we talked about it, I feel like it deserves more than that. I can't give it a 5-star review just because of some of the small things we talked about, the dated technology or CGI and stuff and whatnot. But and even sometimes his tuning looks a little cheesy, with the like little air rings that come out of his forehead. Right. But I mean, story wise and production wise, for the most part, and everything, and acting wise, we didn't talk about Rufus Sewell's acting or anything like that. But yeah, I think it's a 4.5 movie, 4.5 Stranger Knives movie. So that's what I'm gonna give it. 4.5 Stranger Knives.
Nice.
Those were interesting knives with like the little.
Yeah.
They looked kind of Star Trek-y, in my opinion. Yeah, we'd love to know what you think about Dark City. You can always leave us a comment on our website, cinemaheroes.com. You can also reach out to us on Instagram or Twitter. Both handles are @CinemaHeroes. You can also leave a comment on our Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, leave a comment down below about what you think about Dark City, and if you want us to do Dick Tracy or any other movies you want us to review. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you any way you want to reach out to us, and I will do my best to reply. I monitor all of those. I may not be as quick as I should be, but I will reply to you. Anyway, that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.